What's happening, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Crossed Up. I'm Bob Wankel alongside Anthony Sanfilippo. And Anthony, let's not waste any time, man. Let's just jump right into it. The Phillies last night opened up a series against the Miami Marlins, a team that they have struggled with over the last number of years, a team that always seems to have their number. And it looked like we were going to get another result that looked like a lot of the games that we've seen in 2021, the beginning of this year, 2020, really the last number of years. And we ended up seeing a total 180 at the end of the game, and the Phillies have now won for the 10th time in 11 games. And I don't know about you, but after watching them get a series win against the Diamondbacks this past weekend, that opener last night, I don't know, like you said last time, jokingly, that, hey, let's print some Phillies tickets for the World Series. I don't know about that, but I will tell you what, I'm mighty impressed this morning. So let's just jump right into it, man.
Yeah, the one thing about yesterday's game that I thought was going to be a challenge, obviously, Alcantara has been pitching lights out, right? He's been maybe the most impressive pitcher in all of baseball. It's between him and Nestor Cortez, I think, right to this point. It's been kind of like surprising everybody as the two guys who have been the best in their league pitching so far. So you knew Alcantara Nola, it was going to be a really good pitching matchup, and Nola was going to have to stay on his path that he's been on for much of the season to keep the Phillies in the game because just Alcantara is that good. And pretty much what we got, right? It's pretty much what we had through 6 innings, a 1-1 game. Both those guys dealing pretty well. And things started to go a little wonky in the 7th. And we'll get into those specific things about certain decisions that were made in the game. But you're right. The Marlins get ahead 2-1, and that's in the past was the kind of game be like against this team where it was like, that's it. Like that little thing, there was an opportunity to challenge a call that they didn't, and then they get burned by Miguel Rojas again, of all people, right?
And that's what it is. It's Miguel Rojas. The guy's hitting 210 coming into the game, and here he is, with these back-breaking hits, and you're like, I have seen, how many times can you watch the same story unfold again and again and again? But this one had a different ending. So, you said it. Anytime you can come from behind late and win a game, it's great. Anytime you can beat a team that has given you so many problems, it's a great thing. But to beat Sandy Alcantara and the way that he had been going and the way that he even went through the game last night is impressive. Just to kind of put this in context, you can talk about pitchers being on hot streaks and good runs. The 5 games prior to last night, 41 innings pitched. He's averaging more than 8 innings per start, 22 hits allowed, just 2 earned runs, 5 walks, 40 strikeouts, and a 0.44 ERA. And the Phillies were able to survive it. It was ugly. They missed some opportunities last night. It looked like it was going to be one that got away from them, but they rally late. And there are some things to unpack in this game, some things that I sort of, scratched my head at a little bit. And then some things I loved that might have kind of flown under the radar a little bit. So we can talk a little bit about the big picture stuff and winning 2 out of 3 against Arizona. What do you make of Sunday's game? It was kind of a debacle there. I don't put too much stock in that personally, and that's why I almost don't want to rewind too much because we're doing this on Tuesday. We're into the next series, but...
Well, I'll tell you, Bob, one of the important things to me about last night is coming off of the game Sunday, right? So you have a 9-game winning streak, and it ends in a dud, like a total. Look, I got to be down there covering the game Saturday, which was great and awesome, and then you had to sit through that 4-hour debacle on Sunday. But normally, okay, there was an opportunity. Now you're going into the Marlins and a tough pitcher, and it could be 2 losses in a row, and then that could start snowballing the other way real quick. So that's why it was so important to have the win last night, and now you're looking at this series and you say, look, you're not going to win 9 in a row and then lose and then win 9 in a row again. It's just unlikely to happen. Okay, so what you have to look at it, and the way you got to break it down is you just got to win each series, right? Let's win a series and then move on to the next one and see what happens. to get the first one against the Marlins is huge because now you play them 2 more times. They're not a bad team, even though they're behind you in the standings. They are plucky, and so you don't expect to sweep a team like that. So if you get 2 out of 3 against the Marlins, that's great. So it's good to get the first one out of the way. And I think that's why it's important to come off of Sunday the way they did.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You get this prolonged winning streak, and I think it's easy once the momentum halts to kind of then fall back into your pattern and say, all right, well, that was fun while it lasted. And we saw that, and you don't know what's going to happen the rest of the series, the rest of this week, but obviously it sets up in favorable fashion for the Phillies. They are positioned to win this series. Whether or not they do, we'll see. And then you go play the Nationals for 5 games, who just frankly aren't very good. But that being said, we saw this last year. They had a little bit of a win streak going into the beginning of August, end of July, and then everything fell apart. They weren't able to sustain that momentum, and so it's kind of a different test here now. Can they kind of pick themselves back up? And not that they're going to win 8 in a row again, but can you win series? Can you continue to move forward? Yeah. And finally kind of clear yourself of this 500 barrier. We talked about it earlier in this season. One of our episodes was called 500 Forever. I mean, it's just like it's time now to get beyond this. They've cleared the hurdle, now run past it.
Yeah, and I think that the difference this time around, Bob, is that, 2 things. One, the lineup is so much better than it was last year at that point when they started to collapse. If you recall, that happened. Rhys Hoskins was on fire at that point, and so you had Harper and Hoskins both going at a tremendous pace, and then Hoskins gets hurt, and they had nobody to replace him, and nobody else in the lineup was hitting. It was Harper and Harper only. Obviously, this lineup is deeper. A lot more guys contributing, and although the bullpen is still not great, it is better now than it was last year. So I mean, that's faint praise. But at the same time, when you look at the 2 combined, that's why I don't see the swoon that you saw last year against bad teams. I think the lineup's too good against bad teams, and that even if they get into a game that's a little bit closer, the bullpen's a little bit better and will more often than not be better against a bad team. And so I think that's the difference between the 2.
So we know what the end result is. I think that there's a lot of credit that should go to Rob Thompson, the staff. I think that they've done a nice job here picking this team up. And there's a ton of good things to say. I thought when we were going to record this show, though, this morning, we were going to be talking about a game that kind of got away from the Phillies. And I, for the first time, said, ooh, here are some things I didn't quite understand or that I didn't love by the manager. And so I don't want to harp on them too much, but I do want to kind of point them out and just sort of see what you think here. And I know that there's this old school, new school mentality, this back and forth, but that certainly came into play last night. But before we even get to that, I do want to talk about a play that happened in the 7th inning. And so we have a 1-1 game. Runs are obviously at a premium last night, the way that Aaron Nola and Sandy Alcantara were throwing the baseball. And you get into the top of the 7th, and there's 1 out, and John Birdie singles. And so now here we are. That probably the game has, and I know it didn't unfold this way, but it sort of had this next run wins feel to it. And so Birdie steals second base. And in real time, it looked like to me they had an out. It looked to me like they had an out at second base. Now, was it an absolute indisputable evidence, no-brainer call? No. But I think if you look, and it's tough because if you look at the way that replay has worked in baseball this season, especially in certain Phillies games, we have seen instances where you're like, if you just piece these 2 angles together, you can come to a conclusion, reasonably speaking, that we see what the result of this play should be. Now, I do think that last night it was a situation where you could piece multiple angles together and say probably had an out at second base. Was it definitive? Maybe not. Would I have been totally stunned if the call on the field remained? No, I wouldn't have been. But I just thought, given the situation and given the game flow, that it was probably worth a challenge in that spot. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and for no other reason, Bob, than late game after that, when you go to the next 2 innings, those calls are automatically reviewed. Right? So what are you holding on to the challenge for? If there's an automatic review in the 8th and 9th inning, what are you holding on to the 7th inning? Unless you honestly say, oh, well, we might need it in the bottom of the 7th if we get this wrong. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's like holding on to extra timeouts in football, right? And you don't get to use them. I don't see the rationale. That's an important play at that point in the game, and I think you got to use it there. Whether it would have worked or not, I think you got to at least try.
I mean, especially with
they didn't.
Hall of Famer Miguel Rojas on deck. I mean, you got to know. Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I just looked at it. It wasn't like one of those things where I was up in arms over it, but I was kind of like, I don't know, like in a different situation, a different game flow, maybe. I just felt like with the runs being at a premium the way that they were, the way that Alcantara kind of really started to settle in there, the Phillies had some opportunities earlier in the game against them. It just didn't look like that they were going to be able to manufacture 3-4 runs in this game.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, hey, you've got to try there. And they didn't, and they fall behind, and then that kind of leads us into the 8th inning. And this is the one that I really want to talk about, because this isn't just about an isolated sequence in Game 61 of a 162-game season. This is about philosophy and where the state of baseball is, and I kind of just miss this part of the game, and it drives me nuts. So you get into a situation last night, and I want to talk a little bit about this later. So Rhys Hoskins starts the 8th inning with a walk, and I know that he ends up having the walk-off hit, and we can talk about that. It's all fine and well. The at-bat that Rhys Hoskins had in the 8th inning to start that rally that ties the game, phenomenal. Falls behind 1-2, works the walk. He's going down the line, looking into the dugout, hopping, pointing into the dugout, looking at Harper. I loved it. I loved it. And we could talk more about that later. So then Harper walks. So you have first and second, nobody out. Now, JT Realmuto has struggled, and there's just no doubt about it. And he comes up, first, second, nobody out, and he gets Alcantara, who's staying in the game. And you could tell the Marlins were inviting this matchup. Like, they wanted this matchup. And the Phillies have a decision to make. Do you let Realmuto swing away, potentially hit into a double play? Maybe he moves runners naturally with the ball being put in play, but, who knows, right? Or you could bunt. And I know that Rhys Hoskins is on second base. I know that he's not the fleetest of foot. But to me, that situation screamed an obvious bunt situation, get the runners over, and then you want to leave Alcantara in the game, great. I'm taking my shots with Didi Gregorius and Odubel Herrera, both of whom are better hitters right now than JT Realmuto is. Or you want to go lefty-lefty, and I know that Gregorius is not great against lefties. I know that he has struggled, hasn't had a ton of looks against them. I still would have taken my shot there.
It's a no-brainer, Bob. There is nothing that will convince me, especially as a home team, in the 8th inning, okay, you have 6 outs to work with, and you need 1 run. You have 1 runner in scoring position. Why not sacrifice one of those outs to get 2 runners into scoring position? That way, a contact probably ties the game. A hit gives you the lead. To me, it's a no-brainer. And the fact that they don't do it in a 1-run, look, if they're down 2, I can see it. I can see, all right, you don't want to bunt them over because maybe you only get the 1 run home.
Yeah, down 2, down multiple runs. I'm not giving up the out that late in the game.
Yeah, right. I can see it. But down 1 run, there's no reason to not do it. There's so many things that could go in. A wild pitch, pass ball, anything like that. A fly ball will tie the game. The only thing that would hurt would be, and you force the defense to probably play the infield in, so it increases your chances of getting a hit. But the only thing that with Gregorius and Herrera coming up, the only things that would hurt you are a strikeout.
Right.
Really. Or you had a line drive right at an infielder who's playing in. That's it. Otherwise, you put the ball in play on the ground or in the air, you're likely scoring at least a tying run. I don't understand why you go through. And what happens? With the worst case scenario comes out of it is that Realmuto does what? Hits into a 6-4-3 double play.
So
that's even worse than just making it out.
It's not like looking at it and saying, see, I told you, but in real time, I'm like, bunt. Just bunt. And there are different ways that you can go through this. So, like, let's assume that Real Muto gets the bunt down and you have second and third. Now they can either leave Alcantara in the game because he's Cy Young right now, and so you want him to pitch in a big moment, or maybe you do go that lefty-lefty matchup, which Gregorius ultimately wins anyway. But, like, look at it this way. Like, you say, okay, let's say they go to, I guess it was Oker. Is that who they go to? And so you look at this, right? Gregorius is hitting .278 against lefties this season. Now, he's only had 18 at-bats, all fine and well, but he's also only struck out 2 times against lefties this season.
Yeah,
and
his approach this year has changed.
And all you're looking for is contact in that spot. So, like, you feel pretty good about the fact that he's probably going to be able to put the ball in play. And then, oh, by the way, behind that, if you say, okay, well, then you have Odubel Herrera, who, like, I know the entire city hates, and that's all fine and well, but, like, take a closer look at what he's done this season, and you're like, all right, first of all, he's hitting .276, he has an .815 OPS, but then look at his splits when you go deeper into it, and you see that he's hitting left-handers this season. I mean, so far this season, he's hitting .308 against lefties. And, again, like, a decent play in that spot, relative to the way that Real Muto's gone lately. And so I know that's not the way the game's played anymore. I know that we're probably almost, at this point, the ship has sailed. The train has left the station on situational baseball like this, but I just felt like Real Muto Alcantara in that spot was not a good matchup. He had some very awkward-looking at-bats earlier in the night, and actually no lifetime. He's had some success against Alcantara, but this is a different deal this season, both because the pitcher's better and because the hitter is not as good as he's been in the past. And just the at-bats and the way that things sequenced last night, that was a horrible matchup, and the Phillies were fortunate to be able to score coming off of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. The positive in this is that Gregorius' approach has completely changed this year. He's hitting the ball the opposite field a little bit. He's not trying to jerk everything into the right field bleachers, which was a New York Yankees thing because of how easy it is to hit a home run at Yankee Stadium. And it was something that plagued him last year with the Phillies. So it's a really nice thing to see him swinging at pitches the way he's swinging pitches.
Absolutely. And if the trade-off is going to be more contact, a better hitter, a more consistent hitter, I don't care that he has no home runs and 83 at-bats. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right.
Because if you're going to be more productive against the left side, more contact, higher contact rate, be a consistent hitter that can play in the back third of that lineup if need be. That's fine. Like, the Phillies hit enough home runs. They're one of the best slugging teams in all of baseball. I don't need Didi Gregorius to be a 23 home run guy and hit 230 like some of the other guys in this lineup. That's
right.
Fine. It's okay to have different profiles amongst your lineup. So
Correct.
Totally okay with it. Been really impressed with him, and he's had some really, really key at-bats for this team, and certainly last night in the 8th inning, picking up Real Muto in that spot to tie the game and give the Phillies really a chance to go ahead and win it in the 9th was huge, and I guess that goes without saying. I guess to pivot back now, we've had this conversation about, well, Rob Thompson, what's the difference between Rob and Joe, and how does the switch just flip out of nowhere? And I think that there's a lot of things going on here, right? Like, the Phillies catch a bad Angels team at the right time. The Brewers have been scuffling a little bit lately. They go out there, though, and I mean, some of those wins were so impressive. The way that Zach Gallen had been pitching, they just blow his doors off on Friday night, and then Wheeler's dominant on Saturday. It's been a collection of things. Like, you've seen the bullpen, for the most part, Sunday aside, pitch better. You've seen the lineup at the top produce more. You're seeing every single guy in the lineup, even guys who are struggling, still do enough at the right times to kind of come together and make things happen. That's all a sign of a winning team, and I think that this situation is set up favorably for the Phillies over the last week and a half or so. But I will tell you where it was super evident to me last night. And great job, and just talking about how Rhys Hoskins leads off the 8th inning with the walk. Great job by him to win the game with the walk-off, and I was surprised, I think, like everybody else, to see that he had never had a walk-off RBI before. But I'm telling you, man, when he draws that walk in the 8th inning, and he goes down the line and looks into first base, and he's hopping, and there's like 3 hops. I actually tweeted about it this morning if you want to see the video, if you missed it in real time. It's like, that is winning energy. That's how you win games. And let me tell you something about this. we hear all the time teams say, well, when you don't hit, of course it doesn't look like we're playing with urgency. Of course it doesn't look like we're playing with energy. Hard disagree. I know that when you go out and you struggle to hit over a prolonged stretch, it does look like you're lifeless, even if you get in the box and you're like, come on, like I want to do this. But when you see the Phillies go the way that they were going last night, left some opportunities on the table, just had fallen behind, it would have been easy to say, this is just a game that we don't win. We're facing a great pitcher. It's the Marlins. We'll get them tomorrow. We can still win the series. And instead, despite this complete lack of production, Hoskins grinds his way through an at-bat, and he's in the dugout. And that's how you create energy. And it doesn't always mean that it's going to happen. It doesn't mean you're always going to get the hit, score the run, win the game. But you do that over a prolonged stretch of time, and I'm telling you, it gives a team an edge. And I think it's starting to show up with the Phillies right now.
It was interesting. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to WIP yesterday morning. They had Ricky Ricardo on the morning show. And Ricky Ricardo, who's the Spanish announcer for the New York Yankees, has been for a while. The reason they had him on is because there's a chance that now he's going to become – he's kind of auditioning to become the replacement English-speaking announcer for the Yankees because their broadcaster is getting ready to retire.
Right? John Sterling?
Sterling. Yeah. He's 84 years old. So Ricky is splitting like 30 or 40 – however many road games they have left with like two other guys and kind of like auditioning for the part. Anyway, so Ricky's been covering, broadcasting for the Yankees for quite some time. And so they asked him, like, well, Ricky, like, why is Rob Thompson having success that Joe Girardi didn't? How different are they? And Ricky said, if you're talking about managing a game, they're very similar. They're going to do things very similarly. He said the only thing, you might see a little bit of a change with the relief pitcher rules, but other than that, they're going to manage a game in very much the same way. He says where they're completely different is in the clubhouse. Where they're completely different is the relationships with the players. He said Joe had from what he had heard, and of course he's plugged in, right? From what he had heard, Joe had become Crusty Joe, which is what he was, they say, when he was with the Marlins, back when he first started managing, back in the beginning. Like, he was very, very hard on guys, very hard on players, and really not making the clubhouse environment all that exciting and all that interesting. And that by going to Rob Thompson, that completely changes because he's the complete opposite. He's like a guy that everybody likes. He's a little bit folksy, like Charlie in a lot of ways. I mean, he's got that Canadian folksiness to him, which is a little bit different than the Southern folksiness, but same kind of concept, right? And that kind of like loosens players up, and it's what you're talking about. So you have that quote unquote winning energy. Well, where does that come from? That comes from the fact that you feel like you could be yourself in the clubhouse. You feel like you could say what you want to say and have some fun in there. And I'll tell you, Saturday, and now granted they won the game Saturday and everything's hunky dory. It's the middle of a 9-game winning streak. I walk into that clubhouse and here's Nick Castellanos' kid playing like a hardcore ping pong game with Kyle Schwarber. Like, and they're just going at it, and they're like, getting on each other, and it's a lot of fun, and it's like, this is right after a game, man. Like, and it's, who's got guys drinking a beer, having a good time after the game. Like, that was something that I'll tell you. I don't know if it was like that, Bob, with Girardi. I can't say, but I mean, I'll go back to the last time I was in that clubhouse, which was might have been pre-Girardi. It was certainly probably Kapler era. I don't ever remember seeing beers in the clubhouse, like readily, openly out in when the media is in there. Certainly, maybe afterwards. I mean, it's not like these guys aren't going to have a beer, right? But I'm just saying, there's a beer fridge next to Harper's spot in the clubhouse. I mean, like, this is kind of like a cool environment. They got that big open blinking sign in the one locker area, open for business, and they got the music playing and everything. It's a cool environment for guys in their late 20s, early 30s, and I think that exudes. So if you're looking for the difference, is that all it needed? You know, and Dombrowski's coming through. He's high-fiving everybody after the game. Like, it was just kind of a fun place to be. Is that all it needed? I mean,
I'm a big believer in culture. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you need the horses. Like, I will tell you that as a coach. At the high school level, if you don't have pitching, you're not going to win. Like, if you don't have guys that can swing the bats, you're probably not going to win. But when you have some talent, you know, you can have a talented team and go 500, or you could have a talented team that wins a conference, or, you know, pushes for a South Jersey championship. If you push them right, if you have the horses, like, I think you can get something more out of them. And I think that the Phillies have the horses. Like, yes, the team has deficiencies. They've been on display frequently. We saw a lot of them on Sunday, just in case you needed a reminder. But there's enough in that lineup, and there's enough in that starting rotation where, yeah, I do think that culture, feel, vibe, all of those things can really come into play. And you talk about this, like, folksy energy from Rob Thompson. Well, I can't think of a more perfect storm. The guy was born in Ontario, so he grows up there, and then he goes and plays college baseball at Kansas. So, I mean, like, you talk about just, like, being in certain regions that kind of create a certain personality or a vibe. I mean, Rob Thompson, if I said to you, hey, would you believe that he's Canadian and also played baseball in Kansas, you'd say, that makes perfect sense, you know, when you talk to the guy. I mean, he's a very likable guy. You see in brief interactions with him why players would love him, you know? Not that you didn't see it with Joe. Like, I think what happens behind closed doors is what's really most important. But there is just certain, like, I'll tell you what it is. It's like the things that get said by Joe and the things that get said by Rob, like, they may not be all that different, but I do think that there's, like, more of just, like, this sincerity, you know? Like, there's, like, a little bit more of a genuine nature about the guy.
Well, it's interesting, you know, when you hear that, when you hear what Ricky said, and you walk in that clubhouse and you see that different vibe, or feel that different vibe, and then you think about what Dombrowski has said about Joe as a manager, and he says he's a good baseball man, right? He's a fine manager. He's a good baseball man. So what does that tell you? That tells you that when it comes down to the game, the guy knows the game. The guy knows how to manage the game. But he doesn't say he's a good leader of people. And I think and a lot of times we have this discussion, you know, I mean, obviously you do it as a coach. I teach a class called leadership, right? We talk about how you have to bring people together to work together and group dynamics and things like that. And maybe if you don't have that gene to know how to get, you know, to manage 25 different personalities and to get them to mesh together, that could be a flaw.
Yeah.
And that could be a flaw. And so when we're sitting here watching games and, you know, you're criticizing the manager, well, are you really criticizing the manager for what's going on in the game, or are you criticizing the manager for what's not going on in the game?
Right.
And I think that's,
and to, you know what I'm saying? And to be fair, like, because there's no way to just put your finger on it and say it's this. Like, Joe Girardi also, I don't know, because Joe didn't connect with his players, that he couldn't find somebody in the ninth inning to close out a game. Like,
right, yeah.
And that's where I do come back and I say, listen, like, obviously this doesn't all fall on him, but I do think over the grind of a 5-6 month stretch, those things do matter. And
sure.
So I think that two things can be simultaneously true together.
Yes.
Like, it's not just fault that whoever, insert horrible veteran reliever that underperformed late in games, is that all of his fault? No, but I think that there is a certain mentality, a certain vibe, like, we can overcome this. I've got it tonight. Just momentum. I do think that all of those things can be changed by what a manager brings to the table. And as robotic as the game has become, as the gut has been removed from the game, it's become very numbers-based. We just talked about, you know, not bunting in the eighth inning. It's just not the way the game is anymore. So I think that some people will say managers simply don't matter in baseball. I think that's utter bullshit, to be honest with you. I don't know how you could be around this game every single day and tell me that a coaching staff doesn't matter or that a manager doesn't matter. And I understand it's not the NFL. I think that the NFL, and I don't really understand hockey quite as much. I know that the NBA is a star-driven league. I think in the NFL, probably a head coach is more important than he may be in other sports. But you cannot tell me that a manager in Major League Baseball is not a difference maker. No way.
Hey, Bob, speaking of throwing whoever into the ninth inning.
Yeah.
How did Seranthony Dominguez look last night?
He looked all right. I think that we're actually at the point where not only is he the Phillies' best option, but he's become one of the best relievers in the game. So I think you can definitively say that at this point.
I mean, in all honesty, I mean, I don't know how you go back to Knievel at this point in that role. In that role, I mean, you can go to Knievel, and he could be the guy if Dominguez is down. Like if Dominguez has pitched, throwing too many pitches and you need another guy to close, you could certainly go to Knievel. That's fine. But I think that the roles have to switch, right? I mean, at this point.
Do you think that with him sitting out a couple days here, they're trying to get the shoulder back on track, do you think that this creates like a nice natural break where they say, okay, you're working your way back. We're not going to give you the ball with a one-run lead in the ninth or first few times. Like, do you think that this is a nice little breaking point? Because if you're going to do it, it would make sense to do it right now. And it wouldn't be such a slap in the face, like, because it's not coming off of a meltdown. It's like, listen.
Right. And I think it's important to do it now, Bob, because if you're going to go out and add a relief pitcher before the deadline, okay, and which they probably will, the question that I would have if I'm Dave Dombrowski is at the deadline, do I need a closer or do I need a late inning fireman, 7th, 8th inning guy? And if Dominguez over the course of the next month and a half proves to you I'm your 9th inning guy, great. I don't need that. I need this. But if not, we already saw that he could do that 7th, 8th inning kind of role. He could be your new Hector Neris, right? In that regard.
Hector Neris, I know we were all doing the Hector Neris thing, like, I should have kept Hector. Hector's fallen on some hard times lately, actually.
Yeah, I know.
His last 3-4 weeks have been pretty rough. So yeah,
but I'm saying you could keep Dominguez back in that 7th, 8th inning role, but then you go get a closer. So I think this is an opportunity to find out what exactly will I need at that trade deadline to bolster this bullpen. So yes, I think this is the time to make that move. No question about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about where Seranthony Dominguez is at right now. Do you know last time Seranthony Dominguez gave up a run? Any idea last time Seranthony Dominguez allowed a run? May 3rd. He's 14 straight appearances without giving up a run. Here you go. Since May 8th, he's appeared in 14 games. He's pitched 14 innings. He's allowed 6 hits and 5 walks. So he's allowed 11 base runners in 14 innings, 19 strikeouts, no home runs allowed, obviously, because he hasn't allowed a run. I mean, he's been out of his mind. Opponents are hitting 125 against him in that stretch with a 374 OPS. So yes, when we talk about not only being the best option on this team, he has been just absolutely unbelievable. And we talk all the time about the Phillies going out and signing relievers and it not working. Yours familiar. Hello, how are you? But isn't this a great story where he comes in, he's fantastic, you have such high hopes for the guy, and then he's basically out for 2 years, and you sort of just say, it just isn't going to work out, or he's probably going to return and never be the same. And here he is. He's been fantastic. I mean, I remember watching him throw some simulated games at the end of last year, and they were encouraged by what they saw, but he was like 93, 94, and you're like, he's just not the same guy. And here he is now doing what he's doing, and it's, I mean, God, where on earth would this team be without Seranthony Dominguez right now?
I know. It's great. It is a great story, Bob, and that's good. And that's a good thing for the Phillies because now you're starting to see a couple guys kind of fit into a couple of roles in that bullpen. Dominguez, obviously, Brad Hand for the most part. I mean, other than one or two spots. I mean, he's kind of been really solid as that late inning lefty and a reverse lefty at that. Like he's actually pretty good against right-handed batters. So like he could come into that spot with that slider and kind of break it in on break some bats on some guys. So he's kind of fit that role. Maybe you hope Knievel now settles into the role where he was in the Dodgers last year, which was more of a setup kind of situation, and maybe he fits that and that works out for him. Now all of a sudden you got a decent back end. And a couple of the other guys, I mean, I know Bilotti got touched up on Sunday, but prior to that, he had been pretty solid for them. Connor Brogdon seems to have, other than the home run that he gave up the other night, I think he's kind of fit into that, sixth inning kind of guy. You can that Chad Durbin type. That's who I like to compare him to, right?
Yeah.
So I think you look at that thing and you say, there is something you can kind of put together here. I mean, I don't need to see any more Jose Alvarado. I texted you that 7 pitches into his return.
Yeah,
I don't need to see Familia like in these spots.
I mean, and you can't obviously overhaul your entire bullpen, especially when you don't really have any depth to mix in. Now, they bring back Jose Alvarado. He goes down to Lehigh Valley, and this is actually on the list of things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to keep it positive. I actually just wanted to. Can we just pause on that for 1 second? I do want to just say, because I've been critical of Rhys Hoskins this season and maybe over time. Another guy that I've sort of picked apart over the last couple of years, and not really this year, but over the past couple of years, I've been fairly hard on Aaron Nola. And can we just talk about what he's done his last 2 starts before we get into the bullpen?
Sure.
15 innings pitched, 10 hits, 2 earned runs, 12 strikeouts over those last 2 games against the Milwaukee Brewers and then last night against the Marlins. And the thing that I was so impressed by last night, and I know, listen, he gives up 2 runs last night. He knew that he had to match Alcantara pitch for pitch. Like, there was no margin for error. So I just felt like last night, is this a game where he tries to be too fine? Like, we've seen Aaron Nola try to dance around the zone too much. I know that Miami isn't the greatest offense or doesn't have the best lineup in baseball, but I was just really impressed with the way that he kept the team in the game. And I know that when you talk about Aaron Nola, like, this is what he's supposed to do. So, like, I don't want to, like, applaud him for what should be the expectation. But when there's been a guy that has failed to deliver so many times in these types of spots, the game that he gave them last night, I was just really encouraged by it. I just look at where he's at, and I think that he's sort of turned the corner from that mental standpoint where you aren't looking at his starts anymore saying, like, what's he going to give us tonight? I think that you feel reasonably confident that you're going to get an above-average start from Aaron Nola. And I'm not telling you that he's an all-star. I'm not telling you that he's going to be in Cy Young contention at the end of the year. But I think that what you have right now is so far removed in a positive direction from what you saw last season.
Bob, the difference, I think, between last season and this season is all about his command of his fastball.
Fastball, yeah. Totally agree.
I mean, really, it's like when you watch him pitch, he's got confidence in it this year. Whereas last year, it was just, I got to throw the curve, I got to throw the change, and guys were just sitting there waiting on the breaking stuff. They would just spit on the fastballs, like, whatever. We're gonna wait till he throws a breaking ball over the plate, and that's where he would get beat, and that's where he would get hurt. This year, he's got really good command of that fastball. He's hitting corners with it, and guys are got to be up there like, oh no, now we have to think about 3 different potential pitches. Not only that, he actually throws 2 different fastballs, and the one fastball he throws seems like it actually does a couple different things. So it's almost like he's got 5 pitches, even though he's really only got 3, right? I mean, but it's really kind of, he's got that 2-seam, he's got a 4-seam, but the 2-seam actually has 2 different runs on it. So it's kind of weird. I don't know if it's a different grip, how he throws it. Maybe it's different against lefties and righties. Maybe, I don't know. But it just looks different at times when you see that 2-seamer coming. And, of course, the changeup is still devastating, and the curve is pretty good. And you know what? If he's mixing those pitches up like that, and you say, I don't know if he's an all-star, I don't know if he's a Cy Young candidate, he's probably not an all-star. And I was going to ask you this question at some point today because I wonder how many Phillies are all-stars this year. You could make a case for a good handful of them. But obviously they're not going to take 5 Phillies, right? So the question is, who is, who isn't? So maybe he's not. But I think if you look at those numbers, compare them to the rest of the league, he's got to be in the conversation, at least right now, amongst maybe 5 to 7 pitchers to say, yeah, man, if he keeps this up, he's got to be back in the conversation for Cy Young, doesn't he? So even if he's behind Wheeler. Yeah,
I mean, I can go for that. I suppose if he keeps it up, we have a long way to go. I think he's got to make another 20 starts or so.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see. I mean, he's certainly like on the fringe. I don't think that he's amongst the leaders at this point. But I will tell you this, just taking a quick look at it. Starting pitchers right now, just looking at WAR, wins above replacement from Fangraphs. Nola, both leagues here, 8th overall. I mean, that's pretty good. And amongst NL pitchers, you're talking about, let's see, Alcantara, Wheeler, Musgrove, Nola. So there's your top 4 in WAR right now in the National League. And there's a lot of different ways that you can quantify starting pitching performance, no doubt. But he's on a short list.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, he's a guy that I think is is not getting enough publicity for as well as he's pitching. I think we kind of say, oh well, yeah, but you remember last year. Oh yeah, but do you remember the September collapse in the year before that, or whatever? I mean, there's always that oh but with Aaron Nola. Until I see it this year, until I see him have several like bad starts in a row or 3 out of 5 or something like that. As long as he's being as consistent as he is, I'm on board with him.
Yeah, what really helps him is behind Alcantara, who's thrown 91 1/3 this year. Nola's second in baseball in innings pitched at 81 2/3. So that really helps. And the only thing is that list that I just gave you of guys that are near the top in WAR, Nola's ERA doesn't really match what you're seeing from some of these other guys. Like, for instance, right, like I just gave you Alcantara, 1.68, Wheeler, 2.84, Musgrove, 1.50, Nola, 3.42. But again, it's like another situation where he's had his bad starts have kind of clustered on him, and then everything else is 1 run, 2 runs, no runs. I mean, the other part is that you go, and I know people are tired of hearing this, but it's the same thing where the ERA doesn't really match up with expected outcome. It's always been like that with him. It's because
of the defense behind him.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
Yeah.
In all honesty. Hey, one more positive, then we can start. Then we can rip Alvarado.
And then rip the bullpen, and
we can rip Alvarado at that point. And I know I brought it up the last time, and I want to just bring it up again just to kind of mention it because again he was involved in the win last night, and we didn't even mention it. Matt Vierling. Gets the hit, and then that steal of second base is huge because that's how the game is. I mean, I don't know. I don't think he scores. The outfield's probably playing a little bit deeper if he's still on first base. Hoskins hit. Yeah, he gets to third, but the Phillies are still going to need another hit to get the winning run in. So him stealing second base, I think, is a huge play. And again, it's another example of a young guy. Now, he's played third base yesterday, played second base on Saturday when I was down for the first time in his career. So he's showing some versatility, showing some athleticism, being able to steal that base, and he's got some speed. And I'll tell you again, Bob, one more time. I know he's hitting 196. It's hard to get excited about a guy hitting 196. Take the first week of the season out of the mix, out of the equation. And when I say first week, I literally mean first week. It was 7 days. Take those first 7 days of the season out of the mix. He's hitting 268, 333, 724.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not bad. I mean, it's not set the world on fire, but it's certainly good to be a 4th, 5th outfielder and a rereserve infielder by all means.
I think it's just a matter of overexposure. You don't want him playing 6 days a week. That's all. If he's not playing 6 days a week and he's playing 2-3 times a week, defensive replacement late, he's showing you some really valuable versatility. Ultra impressive what he's been able to do. Coming and playing multiple infield spots now. I mean, I think that what he's done over the last week has bought himself some time where the first sign of trouble, the first sign of an 0-for-6 stretch, he's not back in Lehigh Valley. I think he's given himself a little cushion here and shown that he belongs on a roster which frankly lacks depth. So it shouldn't really take a whole lot. And I'll say this. Now that you bring him up, I am one thing I will say, I didn't love the game that Rob Thompson managed last night. I didn't. But I will give him credit for this. And maybe I'm overextending my credit here, but we talked about Didi Gregorius last night in the 8th inning coming up with that hit against the lefty. Do you think the previous manager pinch hits in that situation? Now, I know that the Phillies are thin in the infield, but they could have pulled it off if they wanted to. If they wanted to go to Alec Boehm in that spot and say, okay, we're going to take the bat out of Gregorius' hands. We don't want the lefty-lefty matchup. We're going to go lefty-right with Boehm. You bring him into the game. You play him at third, and then you play Vierling at second base on Saturday. You move him over to second, slide Stott to shortstop. So you could have made the move at that point if you wanted to play lefty-righty. And Thompson just said, no, screw it. We'll take our shot with Didi here, and he does it for him.
Yeah,
I wonder if you overmanage in that spot.
Yeah, I agree. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you look at your defense. And do you look at it and say we're just going for it here, and if it fails, we don't have the greatest setup on defense, or do you look at it and say, Yeah, you know what? We'll be all right.
And not to say that Alec Boehm's an automatic win in that situation either. It's not like they're going to a guy that's hitting 330. It's not like you're bringing Nolan Arenado into the game, or not that he's hitting 330, but you get my point. Like, you're not bringing in a premium player off the bench at that point. You're bringing in Alec Boehm, who's fine, but it's not necessarily such an upgrade. But I just think sometimes managers get so tunnel visioned into that left-right matchup, especially late in games, that they might make that move in that spot. I was
a good
kind of wondering,
there.
would they make that move, and when they did, and I said, okay, great. Okay. So, actually, I'm going to wait one more second. You brought up the All-Star thing. Let's just talk about that first.
Okay. All right.
I think the answer is 3. I know you said as many as 5. I have a feeling Nola's going to get left out. Certainly he's within striking distance of it. I mean, they'll set this team in about the All-Star game's later this year. It's like actually the third week of July. So I don't know when they'll set the team, but you figure the week after the 4th of July, or the week, the 4th of July I think falls on a Monday this year. Is that right?
Yes.
So probably later that week they would set the team. So Nola's going to make another 4 starts or so probably before then. He would have the ability, if he throws 7 innings, 2 runs or less another 4 times, I don't know how you leave him out. But I'm just going to guess that he is left out. And you're going to get Wheeler, you're going to get Harper, and you're going to get Dominguez. That's going to be my guess. That's what you get. Or do you think Dominguez gets left off because he hasn't closed? Or has baseball moved beyond the point where who the hell cares? You just take the best arms. If this were the late 90s, Dominguez would have no shot.
No shot, right. It would be all closers. But they in recent All-Star games have gone with middle relief guys.
If Dominguez gets to the point where you select the All-Star team and he hasn't given up a run over 20 appearances, how do you leave him off?
How do you leave him off, right? I mean, you're right. Absolutely.
So
I
think you certainly can make a case for Nola. You said that they could get as many as 5. I'm trying to stretch to think about a 5th.
I'm not there yet.
Schwarber,
not there yet.
But I'm impressed with Kyle Schwarber. I will tell you one more thing on the positive train. I'll tell you what, man. We're very positive today. One thing that you get into a potential postseason scenario, and you know that pitching is always going to beat good hitting. But I will tell you this, and Matt Gelb actually, I think, to be perfectly honest with you, I did not read the entire story. We were just about to record when I got into it. But I read the first couple paragraphs, and the thesis was basically that the top of the order is probably the reason that the Phillies have had their resurgence the way that they have had over the last 11 games or so. And you look at last night against Alcantara, who's so good, and we've obviously made a big deal about that. But Kyle Schwarber, 2 for 5. Rhys Hoskins, 2 for 4 with a walk. Bryce Harper, 1 for 2 with 2 walks. I mean, you're talking about right there those guys being on base a total of 8 times, 1, 2, and 3 in your order. And I know that Real Muto has gone through his struggles. Nick Castellanos has not been great. And then you're getting a fluctuating performance from the bottom of your lineup. But, if you can get your best hitters to lock in and against premium pitching, which is obviously what you'll see in the postseason, there's a reason to believe, if the Phillies can get in and you have this type of depth and you have this type of talent at the top of your order, that's a tough out, especially when you see Wheeler and Nola 1-2. That's a bad matchup. If I'm a team that, let's say the Phillies get the 3rd wild card, and I'm a team that's won 95 plus games, and I have to go see them in the first round, I'm not thrilled about that.
Yeah.
I know we're way ahead of ourselves here.
No, you're not. You're right.
I don't have the Phillies marching into the postseason. There's 100 games left. I know. I actually kind of feel silly even bringing this up, but it was a thought I had last night as I watched these at bats. I was like, damn, this is pretty impressive against this guy. They're having some pretty good at bats here. And then, I saw Gelb sort of write that this morning. I said, okay, that's something to kind of project out. Should they get there?
Yeah, and we talked about this, and I think that Rob Thompson even said it himself. They finally sat Castellanos for a game.
Yeah.
Give him a game off. Yeah, I know he pinch hit and came into the game, but whatever. Kind of give him a day off. Is there another guy? Is that a situation where It's just a guy who just needs a quick little reset, and then he comes in, and then all of a sudden you can add him to that same grouping because he'll start to figure it out. And Rob Thompson said he's going to put up those numbers. He says 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. He's going to put up the numbers that we're used to seeing from Nicholas Castellanos. Now, that could be just him being, supporting his player, but it's also, if you seriously believe that, if you seriously believe that that's what it's going to be, well, then, you can add a fourth person to that, to that top of the order and say.
Well, I think you certainly hope so. And I mean, it's weird, like in his defense, and granted, he was so bad on Sunday. And he said after the game, he's like, I haven't felt comfortable this year. And, he owns it, and that's great. And it's not like he's been a disaster. He's still hitting 254 with a 720 OPS, and it's weird because it doesn't feel like it's that good. It almost feels like he's hitting 220 with a 630 OPS. Like it's been so underwhelming, but even as bad and as uncomfortable as he's been, he admits as such, it hasn't been like a dumpster fire of a season for him. So you hope that, like, if this is his floor, if this is him really struggling, you hope that there's enough bounce there where he gets back to really rolling the way that he was a season ago.
Yeah, I agree. And so that's what I'm saying.
I'm not as concerned about him as I guess like some people are, or like I know the contract relative to the production hasn't been there, but like I haven't reached the point where I go, oh, this is a bust or this is a catastrophe. Like I just don't feel that with him. Like I still feel like he's going to figure it out. And just a guy I've watched play a ton over the last few years. I just love the way that he hits. I love his approach. I love what he brings offensively. And I don't know. The one thing I actually do wonder about sometimes with him is that, like, I don't think that the expectation was that he was going to go play 50-plus games out in right field to this point either. And, like, I do wonder if that variable has impacted him at all. Like, not that he hasn't played the field before, not that it really should carry over all that much, but when he came here, I don't think that the expectation was that he was going to go play right field 6 days a week. And I don't know. Not that I'm making an excuse for the guy, but I do wonder if there has been some adjustment phase there. He doesn't get to a ball on the gap, or a ball that should be a double turns into a triple, or, there's a play that he doesn't make for his pitcher. Like, those are, from a psychological standpoint, kind of roll over and be like, damn, man, like, this isn't what I expected. And does that have any carryover to the offensive side of things?
Yeah, and by the way, the last thing, remember we were saying, I was giving you, I said they could get as many as 5 guys to the All-Star game. Do you know, even though he's having a relatively down year, that Real Muto is still number 2 amongst catchers in WAR, behind only Wilson Contreras. I mean, you can, unless you count Dalton Varsho, who filled in while Carson Kelly was out catching. I mean, so he does have some catching at bats, but he's mostly an outfielder.
And he has the benefit of being JT Real Muto, also.
Yeah.
He has the name.
Yeah.
So is he 2 good weeks away from putting himself there? Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I mean, like I said, if you were going doing Fangraphs WAR, NL catchers, only Wilson Contreras is ahead of him.
Yeah, catchers don't hit. So you look at OPS plus, and you still see that relative to the rest of the game, like he's been fine. I just think that we in the city sort of look at contract, expectation, best catcher in baseball, big money, a guy that was hitting in the middle of the order last night. I was going to say last season, 2 seasons ago. The year that he had in 2020, come on, man. So especially when you see plays like you saw Sunday, which effectively I think ended that game before it really started. What a bizarre play that was, by the way. Truly bizarre play. I don't think he thought, by the way, if we were recording this on Monday, we'd be talking about this more in depth. I don't think he thought the ball was coming home. I think that he watched that ball go into play and just didn't process immediately, oh, he's coming home with it. He did quickly, like he recovered, but I think he was just totally out of sorts throughout the entirety of that play. I think he was a step late and was like, whoops, and then like just never had his bearings. I really do.
Yep. Yeah, it was weird. That was totally weird.
Okay, so we're running up against the hour here. Let's talk about the bullpen. Jose Alvarado goes down to Lehigh Valley, makes 4 appearances down there. He allows 1 hit and 1 walk in 4 appearances. No runs allowed, strikes out 5. It looks like he's throwing more strikes. He's figured it out. Sunday morning, they bring him back. He's in a meaningless game with, I believe, the Phillies down 7 runs at that point. All he has to do is come in and throw strikes, and he can't do it. I wrote on Sunday, I don't know how much longer, and I know where you're at on this, I don't know how much longer the Phillies can continue to trot him out there, period. And yes, comma, you can probably wonder the same about James Norwood, too. James Norwood is now gone, so we sniffed that one out. Alvarado has got to be coming to the end line here, no?
Yes. He's already passed it, in my mind. But yes, he's got to be coming close. You got to be able to find something better than that out there. You just can, and I get it, and you've made the point in the past. At least with him, you bring him into the game, and he throws hard enough, and he can sometimes be effectively wild enough that you get a strikeout in a key spot.
Right.
But he's so out of control. Like, guys are just taking, moving up his wild pitches. I mean, how many does he have, Bob? I mean, I didn't even count. I didn't even look at this. I swear I didn't even look at it. But, I know that, he's had a few already this year. It's just like, and Real Muta's back there like, what the hell, man?
He has thrown
3 or 4?
4 wild pitches so far in 14 innings.
Okay. I mean, think about that. Let's just be honest with that number, okay? Just put that out over a full season for, we say a reliever gets 70 innings.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're talking about 16 to 20 wild pitches.
His ERA plus this season is 49. 49. And for everybody out there, 100 is average. That's where your league average reliever is. Last year, he struggled. We were annoyed by him at points. 98. So he was basically in line with a league average reliever. Forget that they were using him in the highest of leverage spots. But this season, 49. His whip right now is 2.143. And he's walking 7.7 batters per 9 innings. What are we doing? Now you see 10.9 strikeouts per 9, and that's why he's here. But, I mean, I know they don't have a lot of options. I know that you see, who was it that they recalled yesterday? Michael Kelly.
Kelly, yeah.
He's a guy, he is a filler. If he's pitching for you in meaningful spots, you're in trouble. They don't have a lot out there, and I guess that's why he's still here. But my goodness. So you go back to Mark Appel and you say, how much longer before he gets a crack? And I know you're talking lefty-righty here, two different things, totally different types of pitchers. Appel's a contact guy from the right side, but my God, man.
Yeah, I've had enough. I've had enough of Familia, too, in all honesty. I mean,
he's not going anywhere. $6 million? No way.
Yeah, I know.
You've got a whole year of Urus.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Game Sunday, Saturday, you were there, and you saw him come in, right? And I'll give Rob Thompson credit for this. 2 outs right away. Hey, he's probably going to get through the inning. Base runner, base runner, base runner. And he yanks it.
Get out.
He doesn't 4-0. I think it was at that point, right? It was 4-0.
Yep. Yeah.
We're not going to let this get to 4-2 and then have to bring in another reliever. That's enough. And I see too many managers try to force their way through innings there. That was a good yank.
Yeah. No, get out. See you later. Thanks for playing.
Well,
I got one last thing for you, Bob. And this is not about the Phillies, but once again, kind of maybe you can think about it for the Phillies. Read an article in USA Today by Bob Nightingale, and he was writing about Trea Turner and the year Trea Turner's having for the Dodgers. Right now, I think he's hitting .299 with an .820 OPS, .353 on base. Just really having a great season. And as part of the interview, as part of the story, he decided to just check in with Bryce Harper, just to see, talk about Turner. And here's what Harper says. I think Trea Turner is one of the most underrated players in the game. He's one of those guys that just goes under the radar. He's one of the best shortstops in the game. I'm excited to see where he goes next year.
Why are you excited, Bryce?
Now, Turner said some great things about Bryce as well, so it's like that, mutual admiration society. But they were teammates before. We have 2 middle infielders whose contracts are up at the end of this year that add up to about $25 million.
I was just going to bring that up. I said, well, let's just get out in front of this, and so we can clearly define it. Didi Gregorius is making, let's see here, what, $15.5 million this season? Or $14.5 million? And Gene Segura has a club option next year for $17 million, which I assume is not going to be picked up. So, that being said, yeah, you're talking about between the two of these guys, with Segura making $14.25 and Gregorius making $14.5, about $29 million this year off the books.
And then if you like Bryson Stott better at second base than the shortstop,
there's one concern I have with this, and it's the only one. And Trea Turner is a phenomenal player. I mean, do you know what my concern is?
No,
he's not a very good fielder. And at some point, like, you look at this and hitting 300. 815 OPS. He's got 13 stolen bases. I mean, he's a 25-30 steal guy in a league where that's uncommon these days. I love him from an offensive standpoint. He's coming off a year where he hit 328 with a 911 OPS. Like, he's having a down year in comparison to what he did last year. He's just not a very good defensive shortstop. And could you talk him into playing? Actually, I was talking to Tim Kelly, Phillies Nation, Odyssey. He was I wonder if you could talk him into playing second base and play Stott at shortstop. But
he played second for the Dodgers.
Yeah,
right?
I
with last year with Seager at shortstop.
He's a good player. It's an arms race. The NL East is
he's played center field before.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the NL East is an arms race, right? Like, the Mets aren't going to stop spending money. The Braves aren't going to stop developing fantastic young talent. And you hope that the Phillies will, too, in time. But in the time being, it always goes back to it. We'll always reset the same conversation. You can't waste the primes of Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola and Bryce Harper. And so you always have to continue to spend and reload. And some of that money comes off the books the way that it does. It wouldn't be surprising to have the Phillies linked to him. No, of course not. But you do at some point have to revamp this defense and get better somewhere. And maybe that's Bohm, Hoskins. We've had that conversation a million times. But, yeah, like, it's something you definitely look at.
I'm just saying, there was also part of that. Nightingale was also told previously, in a previous story that he had written, that the Phillies are going to be active in the shortstop market next year. Because you also have Correa again, right? Because he only signed a one-year deal with Minnesota, I believe. Is that correct? I think Correa is back in that mix.
No, unless there's just looking at this, unless there's player options. Okay, yeah. So what he did was he signed a 3-year deal, but only 1 year's locked in. He has a $35 million player option for 23 and 24.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, he's guaranteed himself $105 million if he doesn't want to opt out of it. Right.
But I mean, that's totally going to be up to him. So I mean, but I think there's somebody else as a free agent. Is Swanson a free agent next year?
Yeah,
he might be the other one.
He's a player that annoys me. Like, I respect him, but that's not a guy that I want personally.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm not as big a Dansby Swanson fan. But I'm just trying to remember that previous story that I had written. So
does Correa do better than 35 a year? Like, or can he secure 35 a year plus for more than 2 more years based on what he's done this season? I mean, he's hitting 302, 832 OPS. Again, remember, we're talking about a shortstop here, so those numbers play up even better.
Yeah, I found the article. I found it.
Does he opt out of that?
I mean, he could. I mean, if you know, remember the Tigers offered him, what was it, 10 years, $275, and he turned it down.
Right.
And he settled for what he got with Minnesota. But if he has the opt out, the reason he has the opt out is if he has a big enough season. Do you think that he can he get $35 million over more than the next 2 years?
Yeah. So
Probably.
What is the contract, right? So, like, that's where with Trea Turner, like, yes, it makes sense in 23, and yes, the Phillies need to reload, and yes, they have a needed shortstop, and they'll want to solidify their middle infield for the next 10 years or 6-7 years with Stott, maybe Turner. That all makes a lot of sense. put at what price? Are you paying $30+ million over the next 8 years to do it? And do the Phillies want to enter into that type of market? So it'll be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, the other name that I forgot that he mentioned in that story was Xander Bogaerts.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm not certain that he's a good shortstop option. You want to talk about a guy who's not a good defensive shortstop?
Right.
He'd be better at second or third, but I can't.
Same deal though. He can hit. My goodness, he can hit.
Yes, he can. Yes, he can hit. So just thought just a little something to think for down the road.
Absolutely.
Just found it interesting that Bryce said what he said, and Harper, and then Turner called Harper. By the way, called Harper the best player in the world. Yeah,
you see that bro love already starting off in the distance, and
yeah,
everything that Bryce Harper does and says is very calculated. He picks his words very wisely, and I'm not saying that he's going out and openly recruiting or anything like that, but like Bryce Harper knows exactly what he's doing at all times.
Yep.
And don't think that he doesn't have a direct pipeline to that front office, because he does. So
yes, he does. So I just found that like a little interesting mid-season story that you look ahead to 23, because not a lot of people are looking ahead to 23, and then all of a sudden be like,
It's hard to look ahead to 23 when you have a World Series team in town in 22, Anthony.
I know. I hear you. All
right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Phillies have 2 more against the Marlins here before they play about 400 games against the Nationals over the next week. And so things do set up pretty well here for them. Can they take advantage of it? We will be back later this week with our second episode. Thank you for tuning in. For Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel. We will talk to you guys soon. Be sure to subscribe, like, do all the things that you can do anywhere that you listen or watch this podcast. And we will talk to everybody soon.